Anyway, the latest crime statistics for South Africa indicate a dramatic increase in violent crime. Police Minister Bheki Cele announced yesterday that more than 5,000 people were murdered between April and August this year. The rape crisis is also getting worse, with more than 10,000 cases reported over the same period. Let's get the reaction of policing union Popcru to the latest statistics and speak with its spokesperson, Richard Mamabolo, who's joining us now. Richard, always good to see you. Thank you for being on Newsfeed PM. So, as I was saying there, over 5,000 people murdered within a 3-month period, more than 10,000 rapes reported within the same time frame. What work needs to be done to get a handle on this situation?
Yes, definitely. Latest statistics are quite shocking. But however, I think one of the things that we need to obviously as well consider has been the fact around that these statistics take time period under which there had been some form of protest, and of course, a lot of challenges that has been facing society, especially when you consider what has been happening in the in KZN and Gauteng. So if you were to compare it to last year around the same time, you would know that we were coinciding with level 5 lockdown, and therefore the only statistics that went up from last year, which were actually up last year, was really gender-based violence because people were confined. However, so we should obviously associate the current uprising with what has been happening recently. I think one of the things that we also consider is the fact that over the period of the past 5 years, the stats have been on a general increase. And that is due to the fact that ideally we would want to have statistics giving police leeway into ensuring that they consider their budget, they plan around whatever activities that they'll be doing, and ensure that they look into determining the allocation of resources. So when you look into the past years, you realize that that has not happened. And the main reason behind these challenges has been the fact that there's been budget cuts. There are underlying challenges within police services that are being faced with regards to the uneven allocation of resources. You consider the fact that police stations have been under attack, and of course the SAPS establishment is on a decline due to some of the budgetary considerations that have been put in place. So it is quite worrying, but of course when you have to make a 5-year analysis, you realize that due to the fact that statistics go up and down, this has got a lot to do more with about how the responses of the SAPS has been in the past few years.
To be fair, Richard, the unrest that you're referring to primarily in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng was in early July, so that would not be in this report because this covers April to June. I don't want us to dwell on that, though, because we'll only get a picture, I think, of the impact of that. We know about 300 people died over that period alone. We'll get that, I'm sure, in the next update. What I want to speak to is the issue that you were raising about resources. And when we look at the release of these stats, yes, they're now being released quarterly instead of annually and the rest of it. But how is this data used at police station level?
Look, I think you would also as well have noticed that, since the president made a commitment that we need to have violent crimes by half within the next decade, there has been budget cuts. I think the latest budget cut for this financial year is 11.2 million. So that 11.2 billion, sorry. So that has obviously had an impact around the underlying challenges that police have been going through all along. I think just in the past weeks, we've been reporting about the levels of understaffing and the attacks on police stations. So all these factors, when you add them up, they would obviously result in conditions wherein police cannot fully service communities to the level that is expected. I think the standard United Nations ratio is 1 police officer to 220 people. However, in the country, we currently find the ratio being 1 to 320. So that basically means the population has obviously outgrown policing measures, and if there are no resources channeled towards that, it's likely possible that we will be seeing an increase in certain levels of or certain categories of crime statistics in the future. So we obviously need to look into the basics when dealing with some of these challenges.
And it's one thing to get more people in that blue uniform and get them deployed, people who have first-hand experience as victims of crime who go to police or interact with members of the SAPS say it's not that there's a shortage. The issue is that even when there are officers, a lot of them are still to date not dealing with cases, for example, of gender-based violence and rape in a proper manner. So training, is enough of that happening?
Look, there of course there have been plans around dealing with some of these challenges, but due to the incapacity of the SAPS, even especially at police station levels, it would obviously become impossible for them to do all this work. And in fact, I think when it comes to the issue of rape and gender-based violence, police have been reactive instead of being proactive. But the reason why they are being reactive is because some of these crimes, especially gender-based violence, happen within behind closed doors, and they are only reported after they have happened. So we obviously as well need a multiplicity of approaches, which would obviously look into ensuring that there's sufficient education and awareness that is raised among communities. Otherwise, police can do so much as ensuring that police stations become victim-friendly places, but as well, due to the incapacity that police have, again, we've had instances where you would find 3 or 4 police officers in a single shift, and due to the work that they obviously get from the large communities, it would not be possible for them to at all times be available to do all the work at the same time. So those are some of the constraints that are definitely faced. However, I think when you also consider the very same factor, you know, when you look at, for example, Lusikisiki and another place in Inanda, right, over the past 3 years or so, they've been alternating positions in terms of being the leading places where rape crimes are happening. So that is quite worrying, because accordingly, we're supposed to have used the previous tests to look at what interventions can be made, not only by police alone, but we need a multiple approach, which includes departments, but as well as communities as well, because crime is not solely a police issue. We need to obviously work together, and Popcru, for this instance, will be working with different stakeholders in ensuring that we come about with really having engagements around how we're going to approach some of these challenges that society is facing.
Your members are still allegedly, not Popcru members specifically, but members of the police service are still being accused of crimes. For example, in Norwood, the police minister was saying yesterday there's going to be an investigation into the disappearance of guns from police custody. Those guns are said to have landed up in the hands of cash-in-transit robbers, cash-in-transit gangs, allegedly because police facilitated that, or they handed over these weapons and are working with criminals. How much do you worry about that?
It's quite worrying, really, but there have been such instances. I think in the Western Cape as well, it was quite rife in the Western Cape, and there have been arrests made. The very same police officers actually investigated some of their colleagues and made arrests. So we cannot therefore generalize and say, police are generally corrupt. I think a majority of our police officers remain committed to saving the people of South Africa. In fact, that is why you would have investigations made and arrests being effected. So similarly with what happened in Norwood, of course, it's quite worrying that when we request communities to bring forth their firearms so that they can be destroyed, they are then used to perpetuate crime. It's quite a sad environment as well. So there are actions done in relation to that. It's not that police are not doing anything about it.
And in May, you had requested a summit to discuss the issue of police killings in the country. You were going to look at the causal issues as well as possible solutions. It's been, 5 months now? How much progress has been made?
It's been 5 months, of course, and part of the hindrances towards ensuring that fully takes place has been the fact that we have been under different levels of COVID. But however, discussions and preparations are underway, similarly to what we're going to be engaging on with all stakeholders to ensure that there is dialogue around how we actually deal with crime in the country. That obviously includes all stakeholders. Similarly with police killings, of course, some of the issues are interrelated, and they've got basically specific remnants on the current policing environment. So we will obviously be continuing with such discussions, inclusive of government as well.
Richard Mamabolo, spokesperson for the policing union Popcru. Good to speak to you, Richard. Thank you.